Hello, everybody, and welcome to another conversation with Uncle Sammy's House. I am your founder, Essence Collins. Um, do something for me when you see this, when it pops up on your screen. Click like, click share. You can send us a wave, let us know you're here. We can't wait to get started and have this conversation with you. So share it, get it out to each and every person that you know that is ready for this conversation. So, a little bit about Uncle Sammy's House. We're a non-profit organization, which our goal is mentorship for young adults who basically, if they want to go to college, if they want to go straight into the workforce, if they want to be an entrepreneur, military, whatever it is, we want to give them that sense of guidance to get where they need to be. Uncle Sammy's House usually has like live events like College Prep 101, a FAFSA day or whatnot, but COVID has, like everybody, stopped all of our in-person events. So we have latched on to this virtual space and it has been amazing thus far. So today we bring to you Playing Sports in a Crisis. We have a phenomenal panel today. I'm so excited to introduce them to you. I'm pretty sure you may know some of them already. Um, so I have been excited about this for weeks. So without further ado, I am going to start to introduce our panel to you. First, we have Lester Blunt. He is a retired Secret Service agent and a father of 3 students who are student athletes. Wave to the people, Lester. All right, next we have Randy Pridgeon. Randy Pridgeon works at East Wake High School in North Carolina. Hey, Randy.
Hey.
All right, next we have Lovey Tabron. Lovey is a behavioral medicine coordinator at the University of Georgia in Athens. Hey, Lovey. And then next we have Tiffany Skies. Tiffany is an associate AD for compliance at Dartmouth College. Hey, Tiffany. All right. Next, we have Brianna Green. Brianna Green is a professional basketball player for the Liffey Celtics in Dublin, Ireland. And then next, we have Coach Stephen Williams. He is a football coach at Huff High School right outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. Hey, Steve. And last, before we throw it to our moderator, we have Tariq Cohen, NFL player for the Chicago Bears.
What's up? What's up?
Big reach. All right. So I am going to get out of the way. I am going to throw everything over to our moderator for this evening, Miss Latrice. Hi, Latrice.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining. My name is Latrice Barker. I am the founder of Greater Impact Consulting, and I'm also the Assistant Director for Athletic Academic Advising and Student Athlete Development at Western Illinois University. So I'm extremely excited to be here and discuss some of these topics that are very relevant in our society today, especially as it pertains to playing sports. And so we are 6 months in to a global pandemic, and as we like to say in athletics, we're entering completely uncharted territory as it pertains to sports. And so tonight we're going to discuss playing sports in a crisis, but I think that it's extremely important to talk about the heightened visibility of racial injustices, as this too is a crisis that we're facing. So we're going to jump right in with questions. So we wanted to make sure that we had gave you all a well-rounded perspective. So our panelists we have a large range. So we're going to get a parent's perspective, a high school coach perspective, intercollegiate athletic support staff perspectives, as well as the professional sport perspective. So we will go ahead and jump right in. So my first set of questions is going to be for Lester Blunt. Lester, come down to the stage. How are you?
I am well.
That's good. So I'm going to jump right in. So as I mentioned before, we are dealing with multiple crises right now. So we have COVID-19 and then the racial injustices that have been, like I said earlier, highlighted recently. So how have the multiple crises that we're facing today affected you personally?
Well, basically, it's taught us to
fight through adversity. Sports is similar to the game of life, where you basically currently be falling down. All right, we falling down, but you have to get back up and fight through this adversity. You have to continue to work out on your own. You know, you're no longer dealing with a team, so it's taught you how to work out on your own and adapt, and continue to do the things that brought you to this point.
Yeah. So second part to that question, as a parent with children in the middle school, high school, and college level that all play sports, how have these crises affected your relationship with your children?
Right. It's taught us how to adapt and continue to work daily outside of our normal regimen. You know, again, dealing with the team, and it's taught us how not to look for an excuse. You know, hey, we have to wear a mask, blah blah blah. You know, you just have to adjust and adapt. Stop looking for an excuse and learn how to do things on your own.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, adapting, and thank you for bringing that point up, because athletics, in my opinion, is adapting in general, right? And so, as we're talking about, you have a child in middle school sports. I wanted to transition to high school sports. So for my next question, Stephen Williams, who is the head high school football coach at Huff High School, what have been the biggest concerns that you have seen from your high school student athletes that have lost their seasons or their playing seasons?
The biggest thing is recruiting. You always get the question, am I going to get seen? And that is the biggest thing. A lot of us we coach as coaches, we try to get our kids out there to get a chance to get noticed. And when the pandemic hit, spring ball was taken away. Going to camps this summer was taken away. So the biggest issue is recruiting. Myself having a son who's a senior this year and coming off a junior season when he had an injury, spring was real important. So getting seen, getting noticed is the biggest question kids are asking. How can I be seen?
Yeah, I'm sure that is a number one the number one question that high school students are asking right now. And as a follow-up to that, what are some things or what are some resources that you all have provided to help these high school students cope with that, especially being, there's a lot of uncertainty right now?
A couple of things, a couple of coaches and I, we worked on the last few months. We had a camp down in the Charlotte area where we live streamed it on YouTube, and we had probably over 200 coaches watching. We try to tell kids to videotape themselves working out, dunking a basketball, showing athleticism. One particular situation, my son, it came up question about his speed, and we didn't know where it came from. So we went into a combine place and got him timed and got a correct time so the college coaches could know his correct speed and stuff, because they wouldn't be able to get a time on him during spring ball. So we just try to tell them to do as much as you can. Use all social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, network yourself, sell yourself. And we try to do that also with Zoom calls. And it's been, I haven't been on a computer this much in years.
Yeah. And as Essence said earlier, we've taken advantage of this virtual space. So I can imagine that, you still have to push through and you still have to get it done. So utilizing that virtual space is key, in my opinion. And so with that, kind of transitioning a little bit. So when we talk about, in collegiate athletics, when we talk about an abrupt end to a season, we're usually referring to a student athlete that has sustained an injury, a career-ending or season-ending injury, and we have support in place for that and for those students. And so my next question is for Randy Pridgeon. Hey, Randy.
Hey, Latrice, how are you doing?
Good. How are you? So Randy is an athletic trainer at East Wake High School. And so my question for you is, in what ways have you seen your high school athletes respond to the abrupt stop of sports in such an early stage of sports for them?
Well, I'll tell you, it was a difficult time back in March, and I know Coach Williams can attest to this. We're in the middle of spring sports, and we're hearing about COVID coming, and we get an email from our county AD saying, you can have an event today, but you can no longer provide water bottles. You can no longer do this or that. And so I'm scrambling because we've got games that day. And I'm trying to figure out how to make adjustments. And you talked about adaptability a while ago. We had to really adapt just to make those things happen in those two days before everything shut down. And then, for the seniors, it was so difficult. And it wasn't just the seniors itself. It was everybody involved. It was the athletes. It was the coaching staff who had worked with those seniors, played with those seniors for all this time. And then, you just really feel for those people whose senior, their season's just all of a sudden gone. We're in a, the other problem with that is that we lost connection with a lot of the athletes because they're not at school anymore. We don't see them in the hallways. And a lot of those kids rely on that to see their coach every day, to have that connection with their coaches. Talking, like Coach Williams was saying, getting help getting recruiting, or how am I going to work to get better for next year? And they can't do that because everything's been taken away. For us at East Wake High School, we are in the eastern part of Wake County, and in all honesty, it's a lower socioeconomic level with our kids there. So there were challenges there as well. And we still have challenges with those kids. With us not starting back to school, us, not having sports right now, trying to keep those connections together with those kids are important. A lot of those kids rely on sports. That's their lifeline because, so their home lives may not be that great. Or, you got the kids that's got great home lives and they're looking to better themselves and go to college and do those things. I mean, so it's all on this, it's on both ends of the spectrum. That sports is just a really important part of their lives, and then it gets shut down, it gets taken away, and it's really hard for them.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the quick adaptability that you all had to do from, one day being told no more water bottles, for the next day, and so on and so forth, and that connection piece. So what are 3 tips that you would give your students to keep student athletes to keep their bodies healthy and keep them in some type of shape with the limited access to facilities or their athletic trainers due to COVID?
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting question because I'm also in our physical education department at my school, and when we started having meetings at the beginning of the school year about our PE classes, same question come up. What are we going to do with our PE students in our physical activity classes, in our physical fitness class, in our weight training class? What are the things that we're going to do with them virtually that they can do at home? Some of the things we looked at was, one, make sure they keep a routine to continue to work out and do fitness type things. If it's even just going out for a walk, just to get out of the house. You said a while ago, we're on the computer all the time. So trying to get away from that computer and get away from that screen. Using the Nike Run app is something that we have found useful in our PE classes as well. YouTube videos. We try to encourage them to go out and do that. And then just doing general fitness things. Doing, the walk, run, the push-ups, sit-ups, burpees, things like that that they can do in their home. If they've got access to an exercise bike, doing those types of things. And then, probably looking and exploring other things that they haven't experienced before. I was talking to my soccer coach, and he came in one day and he was asking me about yoga because he has actually started doing some yoga himself, and that's one of the newer things that he picked up that he wants to try to encourage his team to get to do. So I would say, if you can find other avenues, that is going to help you doing those types of things. And then the other thing that especially in the high school sports, they really, really need to pay attention to their nutrition. That's one of the areas that, we're concerned, sometimes with these kids that are at home, they don't have meals. They don't have parents there to fix meals for them. I know the school systems have worked really hard to try to get meals out to the students. So it's those types of things that, they can take some time now to learn a little bit more about nutrition and making sure they stay hydrated and doing all those things that will help them physically when they get ready to come back to sports.
Yeah, thank you for that. So now we'll transition a little bit into the college athletic space and more of the athletic support side. And so I want to bring Lovey to the floor. Hey, Lovey. So my question for you is, what is the biggest adjustment that you have had to make during COVID-19 as a student athlete support staff?
Yeah, so I think people have mentioned the word adaptability over and over up here, right? So everyone, no matter what your role is, has had to be adaptable. So for me, I think the biggest adjustment has been really figuring out how to make touch virtual. So we entered a world and a time where our student athletes really need a lot of support, but we're tasked with figuring out how to show and demonstrate that from a distance. With parameters and yet still coming from the heart, really. So Zoom and other technologies have really been very helpful in this adjusting period. The flexibility that the virtual space offers, I believe, is something that we'll continue to use in the future. So on the flip side of that, because things and people are so accessible, and even more so with the virtual option, I think athletic departments have to be concerned about staff and burnout more than ever.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned trying to make touch virtual and using all these different virtual platforms, because I found even in interacting with my student athletes, it's like, oh, I get to FaceTime Miss Latrice. I don't have to Zoom her. So it's just finding those little interesting ways to, like you said, still have that touch virtually. And so my next question for you is, what are some of the biggest adjustments that you've seen your student athletes have to make at the college level?
Yeah, so, I'll respond from the mental wellness side, but there have been quite a few adjustments. One being, we always see a spike in referrals near long breaks. So like Christmas break, when student athletes are going home for longer than a week or so, we see a spike in depression, anxiety, and just different symptoms. So a few months ago, we sent them home without a return date. Some, most definitely not all, do not come from environments that are healthy to return to, especially without an end time, So another adjustment is the new norm of just constantly being in a state of anxiety. In the normal sports world, things are really controlled, scheduled, meals, etc., So our athletes had to kind of relearn how to control their own time and meet their own needs. This may seem like a white collar concern, but it's very valid, I think about athletes that have been playing sports since Little League, and even if they're not used to every day being scheduled, they're still governed by seasons. For instance, football, they're conditioned to be ready for camp around July. Then the season starts. Then you have Thanksgiving, Christmas holidays. Those might be team functions. You might not be with your family. Then hopefully in January, the season ends and then the off season begins. So adjusting to moving forward with life, but not having these normal transitions is extremely difficult. And that can really produce an anxious state.
Absolutely. I was just joking with a couple of my football players today, and I was like, because they said, oh, we want study hall, we want to come and sit with you. And I'm like, ooh, it's COVID. But they crave that structure now more than ever, now that it's been kind of taken from underneath their feet, so to speak. So thank you for that, Livy. So my next question, I'm going to kind of touch on what Coach Williams said earlier, and I want to bring Tiff to the floor. Hi, Tiffany. Oh, you're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. So my question for you is, what advice would you give to a high school senior entering this recruiting cycle?
So my advice to high school seniors would to consider all offers. So many times we see prospective student athletes where it's D1 or bust for them, and they don't want to consider opportunities at Division II, Division III, NAIA schools, or even JUCOs. And in this social media age, we often see students so eager to tweet about their offers from larger schools and won't even blink or put anything out when they've gotten something from what they would consider to be a smaller school. But right now, you really need to consider giving everyone a look. If an institution has your desired major, you need to consider it. You've got to be mindful that the NCAA is providing extensions of eligibility for current college athletes who were impacted by COVID. So the reality is next year in a number of sports, coaches are going to adhere to their same roster sizes or maybe even smaller roster sizes because of the precautions put in place by COVID. But they're going to have the opportunity to retain athletes that are in their 5th and 6th year. And most coaches, if they have to choose between extending a roster spot to a 17 or 18-year-old and the 22-year-old who already has seasons of experience under that belt, that roster spot is going to go to that person with the years of experience and age. Because I mean,
Sure.
This is a business for coaches. They're judged on and they feed their families based off winning ball games. So when it's time to make that decision, 9 times out of 10, I'd even say 10 times out of 10, that coach is going to keep that more seasoned player. It's also going to be important that you take phone calls from all of these coaches, because coaches are going to be offering scholarships to kids they've never met and who have never visited campus, and vice versa. Kids are going to be accepting offers for coaches they've never seen in person and for at campuses that they've never set foot on. So I know that some colleges are doing virtual experiences, but you have to keep in mind that what a coach is able to show you virtually right now is still not a normal campus experience. So I think it's important that you engage with the coaches and engage with the current athletes as much as possible to try to make sure that these institutions are a good fit for you. Finally, I know there are a number of prospective student athletes who are participating in camps and clinics, and coaches are watching online. And to be mindful that these coaches are not just paying attention to their skills, but they're watching how you interact with the coaches that are on hand to see, how you respond to them and how your relationship would be with that particular coach. So just be mindful of that, because you never know who's going to be logged in and watching this. And of course, as a compliance professional, I can't miss the opportunity to tell any high school athlete that plans to be a college athlete to register with the NCAA Eligibility Center, because without creating that account, a coach cannot make you an offer or even create a visit for you. So that is my advice.
Thank you, Tiff. So that's a very, very good point. So I will echo that. If you are a prospective student athlete and you're watching this, please, please, please make sure that you register with the NCAA Eligibility Center. So switching gears, prior to COVID and the pandemic, when you think of adjustments in athletics, you think of, okay, high school to college is an adjustment, and then college to professional sports is another adjustment. So I want to bring Brianna Green to the floor, I guess to the screen. Hi, Brianna.
Hi.
So could you walk me through how COVID impacted your basketball career in Ireland?
I mean, right now, unfortunately, COVID has affected my season and my career tremendously. Not so more in the positive light either. Because I'm in the United States and because I played professional basketball overseas, the travel restriction for me is very limited. It's no way possible I can get to my team that I've played for the past 2 seasons as of right now due to COVID, because the numbers are rising over here where I'm located in Florida and also where I was in Dublin, Ireland. So the team is kind of going back and forth with me now, which is it's kind of wearing my patience. It's also, a time for me to kind of make sure I stay ready no matter when that phone call comes.
Yeah, and in the, as you just said, staying ready. How have you maintained your motivation with so much uncertainty right now as it pertains to your career? Because this isn't just, oh, I just want to, go play a game of pickup. This is your livelihood.
Yes, I mean, with the help of a lot of people like Miss Lovey that was just on here, Brittany Vaughn, my trainer, my parents, my friends, they all make sure that I stay focused and that I stay in shape, that I make sure I reconnect with my chef and reconnect with my trainers and anybody else that deals with me, making sure my body is okay and making sure I'm taking care of it. Because what you put into your body as an athlete is what you get out of it. So,
Absolutely.
Food every day, then my body's going to show that on the court. And that can be a factor. So, I make sure that everything that I do on a day-to-day basis, keeps me in shape and keeps me ready, because I'm kind of waiting for any phone call right now when it comes to the team. So, I mean, I'm just waiting to get back over there.
Yeah, thank you for that.
No problem.
So I'm sure we all know football has started, professional football has started. So I would like to bring Tariq to the screen. Hey, Tariq, how are you?
I'm good. What's up? What's up?
Thank you for joining us. So my first question for you, well, it's really not a question. Could you walk us through your first game during a pandemic? Like, what was that like?
It was definitely very different. Usually, you have certain game day routines, that involves you being around, being away from the team, maybe around your family or, some friends. That's definitely not allowed this year. We in this like bubble atmosphere. We travel together. For example, we had an away game for our first game, and we left later than we usually would so that we can get in the hotel. When we get in the hotel, it's really no fraternizing in that state. Like, you just go straight to bed. So like, you can't go out to eat. If you know anybody in town, they can't visit the hotel, or you can't go see them. So, in that aspect, it was different. And then you get into the game, and before the game, you have to do this whole waiver, like you're not having any COVID symptoms. And if you check one box no, then you can't play that game. So then you get into the game, and then certain teams, there's only like 2 teams in the NFL right now that are having fans. So my team, Chicago Bears, we aren't having fans with at any game. So game was empty. It's all like just like fake noise kinda. Detroit had some simulated crowd noise, but it really wasn't the same at all. It was way quieter. And they had a couple like songs played at times, but for the most part, it's just your noise against the other team's noise. And it kind of was all right. I knew a couple players on the other team, so that made it like fun. I could like just talk with them in the middle of a play or before or after a play. So it was fun at first. And then, you get into the game, and then at times where the crowd would be going crazy, like a touchdown, it's just like, oh, we just scored a touchdown. It's like so calm. So it's weird in that aspect. But then in crunch time, fourth quarter, that's usually when games get interesting, and you really don't look for the crowd to pump you up anymore. It's all within you. So it felt normal at the end, but at the beginning, it was definitely a culture shock.
Yeah, I can only imagine going from thousands of people in the stands to just your team and the other team playing against each other. So what are some of if you had to pick one main difference or major difference between pre-pandemic and now, as far as preparation for the game, post-game, what would that be?
It's definitely the preparation for the game. Now it's not even, you're not just focused on the game. It's focusing on travel to the game. When you get there, what are you going to do? And things of that nature. You know, like we get tested for COVID every day of practice, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We're getting tested every day. The only day we don't get tested is game day, and we get tested the day before for that. So it's like, you know, it's everything's revolving around COVID right now. You know, if you got COVID, there's a 3-week waiting list right now to where you can't play within 3 weeks. And, you know, that's really better than how it used to be. When you get put on IR last year, you had to wait like 8 weeks. But since it's so like common for people to catch COVID, they boosted it down to 3 weeks so that it would like boost the chance for somebody to come back if they did catch COVID.
I'm sure that I can't even imagine.
Yeah, every day
every weekend and then
every day somebody going in my nose trying to touch my brain. It's like
thank you for
surgery. That. It's definitely like surgery.
Thank you so much. So my next question is gonna be for Tiffany and Lovey. So if we could have them come to the screen. So what are some of the biggest concerns that you have seen your student athletes have with their season ending abruptly or being pushed from one semester or season to the next?
So in my particular office, the biggest question my athletes had was regarding their eligibility. Now I work at an Ivy League school where our eligibility model looks different from every other school in the country. So in most places you get 5 years to utilize 4 seasons of competition. The Ivy League's model is you have 4 years from the time you enroll to utilize 4 years. You don't get a 5th year except for some very, very extreme circumstances, and you cannot compete as a graduate student in the Ivy League. So my students wanted to know when they receive that additional year of eligibility and extension of eligibility, how would they actually be able to use it? So that prompted a lot of questions about the transfer portal. So immediately when this news came out from the NCAA, and, you know, the NCAA started releasing these documents every Friday at like 6 o'clock in the evening. Okay. So my phone would blow up all weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'm getting incoming calls and Zooms. But once they put out their initial document, I immediately scheduled Zoom meetings with all of the impacted teams to give them the opportunity to ask as many questions as they wanted to, and then schedule individual meetings so we could talk about their individual paths to utilizing that additional season of eligibility, you know, if they wanted to. They even had questions about the uncertainties of this upcoming year. So I had incoming student athletes who wanted to pursue just taking a gap year, and how would that impact them as far as their eligibility and just admission to the university, to the college. You know, if I defer, will there still be room for me on campus? And then also I had returning student athletes who of course wanted to know the same thing. If I just don't enroll this year and take a leave, how is that going to impact my eligibility? So that was the number one question that I had, the biggest concern for my athletes.
Yeah, so on my side, obviously it's more the mental side, and it's just a lot of frustration, right? Are we coming back? When are we coming back? What will coming back look like? And then anxiety with uncertainties of what is next. And then, so we told them they were coming back. And then you have to deal with them and their parents. So we started doing weekly Zooms, like town halls, to talk about what things would look like, what our COVID procedures were, and how things would affect them. And then they have to look at, for those who fall into the high risk category, how it's going to affect them and their families. And then outside of the illness, because some of these kids are trying to, in their making a future, you know, they're planning to go and provide for their families for the rest of their life. So they have to decide, what does not competing like this season look like for my family, on top of how does it look for me?
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack at this level, especially, you know, Tiff, like you mentioned, your college has a whole different set of parameters. So I'm sure that you all student athletes have a lot of questions. So to follow up to that, what resources have you all's campuses offered your student athletes in coping with COVID-related stress and anxiety?
Well, on my campus, one, we did provide some resources, but I do want to, if I have the privilege, just say, so when COVID kind of shut everything down, I was with my 4 skiing teams in Bozeman, Montana for NCAA championships. So, one day we're out on the slopes, we're competing. They're saying there's no chance these events get shut down. Montana has no cases. This is a non-contact sport. Spectators don't come in contact with the athletes. And the next morning we're out there and it's over with 3 days remaining in these NCAA championship competition. One of the things that's unique about skiing is that I have a number of student athletes who competed on the US Olympic team, on the Switzerland Olympic team. So they're 24, 25, 26 years old because they've come to us after being members of the Olympic team. And so they're not just seniors, but these students are retiring. This is the last opportunity for them to compete in their life. So, it was traumatic for a number of them, particularly those who it was their retirement immediately. But we have a mental health professional that's assigned to our department, but we also, we have Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center adjacent to our campus. So we reached out to medical professionals there to make sure we had more professionals on standby to engage with our student athletes. And just beyond the mental thing, Levy talked about earlier how students were being sent home to environments that were some were unsafe, some were unsanitary. They were being put in spaces that some had not been in years and not receiving the same care that they were receiving here. So the NCAA did allow for some flexibility as far as supporting their student athletes. And Dartmouth was fortunate enough that we could support some of them financially by giving them money for lodging, because some of them needed places to live, and giving them money for meals because some of them simply just did not know where their next meal was coming from, which is something that's constant. They know on college, they got a room over their head. They're going to get unlimited access to meals. At home, they might be in a 1 or 2 bedroom with 5 or 6 siblings, and access to meals may be limited.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'll give this disclaimer, right? We are at University of Georgia extremely blessed in the resources that we have and what we can offer our student athletes. So what we can do is not what others may be able to do, but that is one of the things that I actually love about University of Georgia is that whatever we can do, within compliance means we find a way to do it. So we have, as far as mental health resources, we have 2 clinicians that are full-time dedicated to athletics, a psychiatrist that's part-time dedicated to athletics, a medical assistant, myself, and then we have a pretty large team for student athlete development. So we kind of went into overdrive on sending out information on self-care, peer support, national and local resources. We also have our mental health clinicians check in with every student athlete that is exposed or has a positive test. Like I mentioned earlier, we started the community conversations, and to give them a space to kind of discuss across teams. We've most definitely helped with housing and with meals, and just try to find any way that we could, again, within reason and within rules, mitigate their stress.
Yeah, thank you for that. And for anyone that is watching, if you are a student athlete or you're a college student, period, I would highly, highly recommend that if you feel anxiety or stress or anything, reach out to your campus counseling center, that resource is unmatched. And it should be free to an enrolled student on that campus. So we're going to switch gears away from COVID and talk about some of the social injustices that we have seen. And so I'm going to keep Tiffany and Levy on the screen with me for right now. So this question is to the both of you. Well, to Tiff. Levy, if you can answer as well, if you have an answer. So in what ways have you seen your student athletes use their platforms to speak out against social injustice?
So at Dartmouth, to be honest, Dartmouth was probably one of the last institutions in the country to release a statement as a department on racial injustices. And our student athletes from all sports, all races were reaching out to us and saying that they found our department's silence to be frankly offensive. So in the interim, many of our teams took it upon themselves to craft very thoughtful statements and post them on their team-specific social media pages to speak out against these social injustices. Many of them even created events such as bike rides or challenges that you could log on, like Strava, I think is the name of the app, to raise money to donate to organizations to support the fight against these injustices. And this even included teams that don't include underrepresented minorities. Like even my ski team, you know, initiated a challenge and raised thousands of dollars to donate to the local NAACP. So on top of that, our Black student athletes were inspired to really mobilize and created the Dartmouth Black Student Athlete Alliance because they wanted to create a space that they felt that they could be themselves and see other people who look like them in a concentrated space. Our campus is only about 4% Black when it comes to students, and maybe 5 or 6% of our student athlete population is Black. And then we have a unique structure. Our academic terms, you get 4 terms and you pick 3 of the 4 terms throughout the year to attend. So, you know, we had some fall athletes last year who took the winter term off, and then campus was suspended before our spring term started. So they haven't even seen their teammates since last fall. So it was important for them to create a space where they felt that they could be intentional and make it a safe space for them.
Sure. I would say that this is probably one of, well, no, this is the best part about my job, is being able to help facilitate those types of conversations and help create those safe spaces for our student athletes to be able to speak up and feel safe enough to speak up, because the reality of it is there aren't a lot of safe spaces for our student athletes of color or Black identifying student athletes. And that's just the reality of it. And so my question for the both of you is, how have your experiences at an HBCU prepared you in supporting or prepared you for the racial fight today?
So if I'm gonna go before you, because we know you are Miss HBCU. But you know, as a native of Wilson County, before I met HBCUs, I found pride in myself through Sally B. Howard and Dr. Woodard's YEP program. They taught us Swahili. They taught us how to understand and articulate that our Black is beautiful. As an undergraduate student, I gained so much knowledge about my culture and the rich history at Winston-Salem State, in the path that was laid for me to even be able to attend college. So as an adult working at an HBCU, I believe at the time I enjoyed the family environment and most definitely made lifelong connections. But it wasn't until recently that I actually understood and appreciated what I had at an HBCU. So working at North Carolina A&T and Southern University, I was in a department full of people that look like me. And there's a sense of peace in it. And I'm not saying that it doesn't go without days of frustration. But there's also a sense of belonging and togetherness that goes really unidentified in that moment. So today, working at a PWI with racial tensions at an all-time high, it most definitely makes me miss that protective blanket. But I'm thankful for the foundation that it laid in showing me who and whose I am to help me as I navigate this fight.
So first and foremost, I got both of my degrees from HBCU. So I did my undergraduate studies at Virginia State University. I got my Master of Science from Grambling State University. So if I were not even able to get those credentials, I wouldn't even have the opportunity to sit at the table that I'm sitting at today. If I did not get a volleyball scholarship to Virginia State University, I don't know where I would have been able to afford to go to school. So that's the number one thing for me. But my experience at an HBCU prepared me in a number of ways to support my student athletes. Particularly the conversations that I've had with my athletes is that they didn't feel that their voices were heard or being represented at the senior table. So them seeing me and identifying being identified as someone they felt comfortable having conversations with, a lot of them, one, just came by to say thank you for being representation for them, and two, for keeping my door open to engage in conversations with them. Because sometimes our minority administrators and even our coaches find difficulty. These are adults, but they still find difficulty being an underrepresented minority communicating things at the table. So the one thing I really appreciate about my HBCU is that it allowed me to find my voice in a safe space. So when I began to work in spaces that were not as safe, I was confident enough to speak up and felt that I had the knowledge and the capabilities to speak up because I was so confident in what I learned and was taught at my HBCU.
And I would even echo that. In being an HBCU grad myself, I would even add on to say it gave me the confidence to know that I can create those safe spaces for my students because it was created for me. So I want to bring Brianna and Tariq to the screen, as they're HBCU grads as well. So could you all answer the same question of how have your experiences attending an HBCU prepared you for the racial fight today?
I guess I started off. I feel like going to a HBCU prepared me in the way of, knowing that I'm not out there by myself. When there's something to fight against, you have a lot of people that have your back. Like the bond I got at A&T was, that there are people that look like me in all levels of the world. It was teachers that looked like me, other students that looked like me. It was, the chancellor looked like me. So it was just a great feeling to know, like, okay, if I ever, had to go against something, I have people that I can depend on and that I can see myself, being able to talk to, in a comfortable space.
Thank you for that.
What he said, attending the Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. It was always, we don't see color. I met a lot of people of a lot of different race, even going to Southern, not just, people that look like me. So I think it was a great thing, and also having LSU, not too far up the road from us, which is, a big PWI school, that also was never a diverse thing how it is now. I'm pretty sure it's very challenging for any, college student, that's going through the change. But, attending the HBCU, I feel like it just prepares you for an ultimate fight against the, racial fight that's going on right now. So I think it's a great thing.
Thank you for sharing. And for the viewers, she laughed when she said Southern because Tim Southern and Grambling have this rivalry. So she had to throw her little dig in there. But thank you for sharing that. So my next question is going to be for Tariq, saying in that same, along those same lines. So what are your thoughts and emotions as a Black man in this world? And then how does being a very well-known Black athlete affect that?
At first it was a good feeling. That's your whole dream, making it to the NFL when you're young, and then you don't know the problems that come with it. But it's what comes with the territory, as they say. But especially hit hard when the Kaepernick situation happened, and it was like you had to choose. There's people that saying if you take a knee, you're gonna lose your job, and then it's like, dang, I can't turn my back on my community. Especially me coming from an HBCU, was like, at an HBCU we were the majority. In the rest of the world, you're a minority. So it's like, dang, you can't turn your back on everybody that you know. So it was a hard time, and I probably should have kneeled, early on, because I feel like it would have meant more than it does now with everybody kneeling. It did more for the fight early on to be, one of those frontline guys. But now I'm trying to, make it up on the back end, doing a whole lot of things, and not only the community back home, but the community in Chicago as well.
So you say that you're doing things, so that actually leads me into my next question for you. So what does doing your part in this fight look like?
I feel like it's really getting back to the kids in the community, because everybody knows the children are the future. So I feel like if we plant that seed now, you know, and tell them what they can be instead of just being an athlete or a rapper, you know, there's multiple ways to make it out. You know, before I even got to A&T, I didn't know what HBCU was until like my senior year in high school. So I feel like if they see people of color doing more than just rapping or playing football, then it would motivate them in the way that athletes motivate kids. And I feel like, especially coming from an athlete, telling them you can be more than an athlete, or telling them like, oh yeah, I wish I would have did this and not been in sports. You know, I feel like that'd mean a lot to kids, and just spending that time with them, so you know they won't be in the streets running around and just, you know, not doing anything productive.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And thank you for your time with us here tonight. Could I get Lester to the stage? I feel like I've said screen, stage, floor. So my question for you is, how have you helped motivate and encourage your children during the pandemic and through the racial injustices that have been highlighted all over the news and any and every social media outlet?
I would say the key word in that would be self-motivation. You have to be a self-motivator. Instead of relying on doing everything with the team, is incumbent upon you doing the same things that allowed you there in the first place. And you have to be self-motivated, you know, in these times, you know, until everything resumes back to normal. You have to make it known that everything will return back to normal. You just have to, you know, weather the storm.
Thank you for sharing that. So lastly, for our panelists, I want to bring Lovey back. I feel like we've had a lot of good discussion and a lot of good conversation, but this can be some heavy topics. So I want to end on a lighter note. So Lovey, what are 3 self-care tips that you would give student athletes, high school or college, or even professional athletes, to cope with depression, anxiety, and other stressors during this time?
Yeah, I think it's funny that you said lighter, right? And hopefully as we work towards the future, like we talked about earlier, you know, we have to make mental health and mental wellness a part of the everyday conversation, and help people to understand that it's okay to seek help, it's okay to talk about, and it's okay to acknowledge that you use those services. So my first thing is talk to someone. Speaking with a counselor does not mean that you have a mental illness. It doesn't mean that you're what society calls crazy. Times are hard right now, and it's more than okay to not be okay in the moment. I've had plenty of days where I've called you like, Treese, I'm over it today. You know, I'm angry. I'm angry at the world as a Black person, or I'm frustrated as someone that works in athletics, and we just can't do what we're used to doing right now. And then secondly, find some sort of community service outlet that is acceptable with COVID precautions. Pouring into others is refreshing, and creating opportunities to be a light for someone else will in turn make your light shine brighter. Lastly, create parameters for yourself. So, you know, you are really good at texting me like a pretext for a conversation. Are you able to hold what I need to share with you? Do you have
the mental capacity? That's what I say. Hey, Lovey, do you have the mental capacity to deal with mine today?
Yeah, and you know what? Sometimes you just have to outright be like, you know what? Actually, I don't. But we could talk about anything else, you know? So, you know, so ingesting too much social media or news, or even like I was just saying, other people in some instances can be overwhelming. And it's more than okay to say, hey, I need a little time for me. Identify things that help you reset and make sure that you're finding time to do them.
Thank you so much, Lovey. And thank you everyone who tuned in. I want to thank all of the panelists that joined us and engaged in this conversation with me tonight. So if Essence could come back. Hey, so I want to thank you personally for hosting this event and allowing us to share information and pour into whoever is tuning in and may need to hear this. And so I have a question for you. So how can we stay engaged with Uncle Sammy's house, and how can we know what's coming up next, or what your upcoming events are?
Okay, so let me pull out my little razzle dazzle. At the screen below, you can follow Uncle Sammy's house on Facebook. And we also are on Instagram now too. Everything is Uncle Sammy's house all across the board. And then if you have questions for myself, Uncle Sammy's house, or any of the panelists that were on tonight, you can email us at askcollegeprep@gmail.com. So that is basically how to stay in touch and in tune with us. We also have a YouTube channel which houses all of these videos so that you can go back and replay them. And then in the next thing coming up for Uncle Sammy's house will be a virtual FAFSA day, because that is like one of our first events, helping students complete their application for financial aid. So we will probably be doing that around the first or second weekend in October, because FAFSA becomes available for the next academic year on October 1st. So if you stay in touch via our Facebook and Instagram, we will post the date for that. And then, of course, we have to keep these conversations going. So the next set of conversation will be about mental trauma. So this is the end of the crisis series, because I don't know about y'all, but I think I'm kind of pandemiced out with everything. So now we're going to step into what it's like for trauma for different people, different audiences. So I'm very excited about those next step of conversations with Uncle Sammy's house. And Latrice, I just want to thank you for being willing to be our moderator for today. You've done a phenomenal job. And thank you to all our panel. I do not take it lightly that you all have given your time and your knowledge on today. And I really hope that the content that was delivered today was helpful to everybody who watched and who will see the replay. So as for that, if you would like to give to the efforts at Uncle Sammy's house, here's our Cash App. Each one teach one, help one. All right. So again, I just want to say thank you to everyone who has been a part of the panel, and thank you to everyone who has watched tonight. And that's all from us. So good night, everybody.
Good night.